Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue talking about my current project of coding the combat system for a viewer's game. More specifically, I'd like to talk about a problem that I saw with the way that companions are acting and what I've done to try and change that. So first of all, the problem. There are some weapons, specifically the two types of machete and the broom, which can either be used to strike or can be thrown. And the way that companions choose their attack at the moment is that they just choose randomly from what options are available. So if there's a throw attack and a strike attack, they have a 50% chance of throwing the weapon and 50% chance of striking with it, or at least a 50% chance of wanting to throw it and a 50% chance of wanting to strike with it. And that means that at any given point, a companion has a 50% chance of throwing their machete as opposed to striking with it. Or at least subject to the availability of targets anyway. And that struck me as rather high. It seemed much more likely that you would mostly sort of strike with a machete and you would only throw it very occasionally. Now, of course, the characters in this game are not meant to be sort of trained warriors. They're more or less normal people from a modern city. Even though one of the classes or personas is called warrior, they're all more or less sort of modern, modern people. And also they're probably quite sort of panicked and freaked out because it's about an invasion of giant monsters. But even so, that still seemed a bit high. So I decided to write some code which makes it more likely that the companion will choose the strike option if there's a strike option and a throw option. So first of all, we need to have some way of recording whether a given weapon is a weapon of this type, whether it has the strike and the throw option. And we could look in the attacks that are available each time, but that would require a bit of processing. It would be easier if we had a single space in the arrays that are to do with weapons that kept track of that. So that's the first thing I've done. We haven't added any variables for this, but we have extended one variable, the WEA_OVR array, which stands for weapon overview. And I've added before this we had slots 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4 for each value of the first number. Well, now we have slot 5 as well. And there's a note here that says it's set to 1 if this weapon has at least one hand-to-hand attack and at least one throwing attack. This is not in initial data, but is set up in the passage hit and throw. So I could have set it up in the initial data. I could have just added, because it's pretty straightforward. There's only three. The two machetes and the broom, I think, are the ones that have it. And we could have just added that in this array. But what if we change the weapons? What if we add new weapons? It would be easier if we didn't have to add that bit of data and if the computer worked it out for itself. So that's what I decided to do. And here's how we do that. We do it in this passage here. So this passage used to go straight to this passage, but now instead this passage, ammunition, goes to hit and throw goes to choose character. So this is all done sort of at the start of the game. I've tested the game and there isn't any discernible delay. It's like a fraction of a second before it starts. So it doesn't slow the game down too much. And because we're going to check every weapon, well, naturally we need a for loop that goes from 0 to whatever the highest number is, and that's going to be WEA_OVR.length -1. We've used this .length -1 thing before. We're going to go through every weapon. For each weapon, we have these two temporary variables, X and Y. They're both set to 0, and then we're going to set them to 1. If we find a hitting attack, we're going to set Y to 1. If we find a throwing attack, we're going to set X to 1. And then if both of them are 1, we're going to update that section of the WEA_OVR array. So we have another for loop. This time it goes from 1 to WEA underscore OVR Z2, which is the number of attacks that weapon Z has. Currently always 1 or 2, but this will work if that happened to have a higher value, if we added another weapon that had 3 attacks or more. Here we do something that we've done a few times before. We set V, another temporary variable, equal to WEA underscore OVR Z0, which is the text that is the name of the weapon. So it's something like pistol, shotgun, machine gun, frag grenade, etc., plus a space, plus W, which is the number of the attack. So it'll be something like pistol space 1 or pistol space 2 or machine gun space 1, etc. Why do we do that? We do that because WEA underscore ATT, the array whose name is short for weapon attacks, doesn't use numbers for its indices. It uses text, and so we need text that's in that form: the name of the weapon, space, and then a number. So we look at WEA underscore ATT V3, which is WEA underscore ATT pistol 1 3, for example. If it's equal to 0, we set Y equal to 1, and if the same slot is equal to 1, we set X to 1. Because Y is the variable that we've said we're going to set to 1 if it's got a hitting attack, and WEA underscore ATT something 3 is whether that particular attack uses ammunition or uses up the weapon, or neither. So 0 means striking with the weapon, 1 means throwing the weapon, 2 and 3 are to do with using up ammunition that's separate to the weapon, so they're not relevant to what we're doing, but we're looking for 0, which is striking, and 1, which is throwing. So if it's equal to 0, we set Y equal to 1, which is the hitting attack or striking attack, and if it equals 1, we set X equal to 1. And then we finish that for loop. And then we ask, is X times Y equal to 1? Because X and Y both have a value of either 0 or 1, the only way that X times Y can equal 1 is if X is equal to 1 and Y is equal to 1. In other words, if we've found both of the types of attack. If that's the case, we set that slot that we talked about, WEA underscore OVR Z5 to 1. And then we move on to the next weapon. And having done that, of course, we continue on to choose character. All right, so now we know which weapons are of the type that we need to worry about. So now we need to do something that relates to that changes the way that the attacks are chosen, if that's the case. The way that I've done that is I've created a new passage called companion attack, and I've pasted code into it, which used to be in companion default. And the reason we do that is because we might be going around companion attack more than once. We might be sort of reloading it and choosing a new attack. And so we need to set it up as a separate passage. So in companion default, we have a part where it says include companion attack, which is where we choose the attack, and then we go on to say, something like companion 2 has chosen the attack slice or something. I don't know that slice is one of the options. Throw, something like that. But the relevant code we need to look at, the changes, are in companion attack. So I've already talked about this bit of code. This is an old bit of code. What it does is it chooses a random number from 1 to the number of attacks that this weapon has, which is either 1 or 2. So if it's 1 attack, it'll always choose 1, and if it's 1 or 2, it'll choose 1 or 2 with, on average, equal chance. And it'll actually be the name of the weapon and a space and the number. Again, because that's how WEA underscore ATT indexes its data. So we have this specific situation in which we will reject that option and just choose again. And that is if three requirements are met. If WEA underscore OVR square bracket weapon, square bracket $INI underscore who, n square bracket 5, n square bracket is equal to 1. What does that mean? Well, INI underscore who stands for who has initiative. It's the number of the character that's currently acting. If we're on this passage, then we're talking about a companion. So INI underscore who is just which companion are we talking about. Weapon is the array that is the number of the weapon that is in the main hand of the character that we're talking about. So $weapon square bracket $INI underscore who, n square bracket is just what weapon is this companion holding. And then we have WEA underscore OVR. What weapon is this companion holding? What weapon is this companion holding? 5. And we've already seen that WEA underscore OVR some weapon 5 is set to 1 if it's one of these weapons that has both a throwing and a striking attack. So in other words, this bit here just means if we're talking about a weapon that has a throwing and a striking attack. And if WEA underscore ATT X3 is equal to 1. Well, that just means if it's if the attack that we're talking about is a throwing attack. So if we've got a weapon that is can be thrown or used to strike, and in this line here we chose a throwing attack, and random bracket 1, 6 and bracket is greater than 1. In other words, if we roll a die and get any result other than 1, if all those things are true, we include companion attack, which just because this is companion attack, it just means we effectively go to the top of the page and choose another attack. So it's basically saying most of the time, if you have an attack that can be, if you have a weapon that has a throwing attack and a striking attack, and you choose a throwing attack, most of the time, reject that and just choose again. In other words, it skews the results. So most of the throwing attacks will be rejected, and so we'll be more likely to end up choosing a strike attack than a throwing attack, and therefore the companions will, if they have a machete or a broom, even though they can throw it, they won't throw it as often as you would get if they were choosing randomly. They won't throw it half the time. I haven't worked out the exact odds, but it's it's a lot less than 50% of the time. And that strikes me as a more realistic sort of behavior, basically. And therefore that solves the problem that I saw with what they were doing. So I will leave it there. I have, there's one other thing that I want to change in the layout of the companion inventory screen that we were talking about in the previous video. There are also various special attacks that I haven't coded yet. Like there are some attacks that hit automatically. There are some attacks that target more than one enemy in the same range band. But that's what I'll be those things are what I'll probably be doing in the future. But for now, I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.